Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Homer, we're out of vodka.
A quick shot, they score! Schrader beats Smith over the left side, and it's 5-1 Minnesota. By Parisi, Niederreiter supports. Niederreiter drops to Spurgeon to Stahl. A save by Ward. What a nippy little play. Stahl for Parisi, he scores!
Losing it. Back is Niederreiter. Niederreiter for Gramwin. Gramwin goes from the center of the ice down the left side, gains the line. Throws on goal. He scores. Gramwin scores. And boy, Pickard shaking his head. He wants that one back.
Gonna get through your head what the mist in my head because I'm gonna.
Pickett three. He does. Goes centering pass in front. Here's Koivu. Koivu tries to slide it over. Shoot. Score. It's Martin Hansel on the power play, driving a dagger through the heart of his old team.
Well, how fitting is that?
Now it's all out and you know.
The Wild set franchise record in wins and points.
I'm back on the road, that's the plan and the cloud because I'm gonna. No need for me to wait because I wanna. No need to be too late because I'm gonna. They say I told you so, alright. Come on. You believe I told you so.
Welcome to Giles and the Goalies podcast, episode 98. Getting very close to 100.
Dangerously close.
Yeah, but, this is going to be our regular season wrap-up show, as we're recording on a kind of an overcast afternoon here in downtown St. Paul. We are at Tin Whiskers Brewery again, second week in a row. And they are located on the corner of 9th and Robert, which is a good 15-20 minute walk from the arena. We'll kind of get more into that later.
Sure.
I am Giles Farrell. Across the table from me, making better progress on his beer this week, is Ben Remington.
Hello.
We got a lot to get to this week, so we're gonna jump right on in it.
Sure.
Because we recorded last week before the Colorado game on Sunday night. So as you could tell from the intro, we got that in there. But a very good week from the Wild, all things considered, I would say. They had a cupcake schedule, as we pointed out, and they won all four. So I guess you can say they did what they needed to do.
Right.
Obviously, you want to fine-tune a few things, but overall, what are your overall thoughts on the week?
Well, it's just like you said. I mean, they had a soft schedule, so they should have taken care of business, and that's exactly what they did. And it's a good sign that they're actually beating teams they're supposed to beat. I think they're coming out of that horrific March where it felt like they couldn't beat anybody, let alone the doldrums of the NHL. But they actually managed to beat handily. And also, as another thing too, they actually, I think they. Not only did they beat those teams, but I felt pretty good about the way they played. It wasn't games where they won, but you felt like, oh God, like they escaped that game by the skin of their nuts, or they really shouldn't have beat the Avalanche. They played so poorly. They kind of really dominated the pace of play in most of those games. Not for every second of every game, obviously, but for the most part, I mean, the shot totals were good. The shot attempts were good. The scores were reflective of how well they played. So, as the intro so eloquently stated, I hate to say I told you so, because...
I wonder who picked out that song.
I've got a knack for it. What can I say? Being a smartass. But it seems like they're back on track now. And have they, played a game where you snap your fingers and you're like, that's it, they're back? No, not really. But at the same time, you don't have that foreboding like, oh my God, they're playing like dog-ass feeling going into the playoffs. So I think this team is as prepared as they could be for going into the playoffs. I think they're obviously more well-rested than they've ever been entering the playoffs, at least in the Mike Yeo era, because they didn't have to scratch and claw for a spot. So I feel pretty good about how the last week went. I feel pretty good about them getting some players some rest, notably Dubnyk.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
It was good. Obviously, they took care of business Sunday night against Colorado. Then they did again Thursday. It was a little closer on Thursday than what I would have cared for. But
yeah, well,
and also the game against Carolina was a little closer than what I would have cared for. But before we jump into the next topic, which is going to be Dubnyk, because that's the big talking point here.
Sure.
Just a quick rundown the games. Sunday night, Wild won 5-2 against Colorado. No shortage of words on how much that warms my heart.
Your montage, your vine of beating the Avalanche is just fantastic. It is just...
Bury me with that.
Tremendous.
And Tuesday, to wrap up their home schedule for the regular season, they played the Hurricanes, and they really dominated the first period. They had 3 goals, but unfortunately, the Hurricanes put 3 goals in equally, but only on 6 shots. And Dubnyk was not looking overly sharp, but I think there came a point in that intermission when something finally clicked with him, and he was able to lock it down for the remainder of the game, and the Wild ended up winning 5-3.
You think Boudreau slammed a door really hard or something, or you think he rattled off a couple of F-bombs?
Either that, or he just whispered Alex Stalock into his ear.
Stalock has a .944 save percentage. The NHL is here.
And then they travel out to Denver, and a good helping of Wild fans went with them to Denver.
Yeah, indeed.
Shout out to those.
It helps when Avalanche fans are no longer buying tickets too.
Yeah. Well, but they were all kindly treated to a pair of socks as they left the Pepsi Center Thursday night.
Oh, they got socks.
Nothing says off season like a pair of socks. And as my friend tweeted me, are they golf socks? Which would have been very, very funny.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
But,
you can never have enough dress/golf socks, I've found.
Well, if you're the Avalanche, you could never have too many golf socks, especially this time of year.
No, that's true, yeah.
No, the Wild won 4-3 Thursday night. They did kind of get bailed out a little bit by the video review, which well, I guess
it was the right call. So there's that,
right? But I think my big deal was kind of quick sidebar on this is they looked at the play just to see where the puck was when the whistle blew.
It was so bad.
So after about 3 minutes of review on that, they came and ruled it a goal, only for Bruce Boudreau to challenge that ruling on the grounds that there was goaltender interference. And then they took another 3-minute review to look at it, and they came back and said, okay, there was goaltender interference, no goal.
Right.
Wild go on to win. My problem with this is they were already looking at this play, and I guess I don't understand why there was just no goaltender interference call to begin with. Like,
right?
Did they just do that? They can't do that, or did they just overlook that? Like, I don't have the rule book in front of me, but
not to give them a pass, because I will absolutely not give them a pass. But it was like kind of 2 different parts of the play. It started off with the goaltender interference, which led to Dubnyk kind of sitting on the puck, which led to it squirting under him. So at first they were looking at the squirting under him portion of it, and then secondly they looked at the goaltender interference that landed him on his keister. But you're absolutely right. Like, how do you see that and be like, okay, you're looking at the first replay, and you see Dubnyk go down. They had to have seen that. That was part of it, part of the first replay. You have to see Dubnyk go down. How did he go down? He went down because he got his own defenseman shoved down his throat. How at that point do you not just say, oh, well, it doesn't matter when the frickin' whistle blew. The guy, Brodin was cross-checked into Dubnyk's face. It's just the whole review thing, and then, we saw it last night in overtime with the Dallas Stars getting their overtime winner drawn back because of, an offside by the narrowest of margins, where Sagan literally had his skate off the ice above the blue line instead of on the ice on the blue line, which would have been a good goal. It's just, this whole replay thing with the NHL has gone completely out of hand. It's just, they can't manage it correctly. They can't dictate it correctly. They're screwing up every single facet of this replay thing. And not to say that replay should go away, because you want them to get the calls right. But at the same time, like, it's just such an absolute S show that I just don't understand how they can go forward with it like this. They've got to streamline. They've got to do some refinement. They've got to, I'm sorry, get rid of offside replays. Just get rid of them. They're so stupid. And sure, the Wild have benefited from some this season, and maybe they've lost one to some. I don't even remember, but it's just such a stupid reason to overturn a goal when you're offsides by a whopping 3 inches. Did that really factor into the goal? 99% of the time it doesn't. Unless it's a really, really egregious offside call, I just don't see the need for it. And those don't happen often enough to where I'm like, this needs to change, And the same thing with these, goaltender interference calls, non-calls. I mean, what a ridiculous turn of events that was.
Well, I think just on the basis of what we saw from replay and other NHL newsworthy things this last week, probably calls for another special...
oh, my God.
NHL is bad podcast, but we might.
Do we want to talk about the Olympics now, or do we want to wait?
Let's get into that a little later. Let's keep driving on here.
I got something for you on that.
The Wild win in Denver, and then they close Saturday night in Arizona. Darcy Kemper gets the start. And the Wild win 3-1, and what very well could have been Shane Doan's last game in the NHL. Nice moment before when they had the ceremonial puck drop with Craig Cunningham, who had a heart attack,
massive heart attack on the ice.
He had to lose his leg.
Yeah.
So Koivu punted on taking the opening faceoff, and he let former Coyote Hansel take it. So a nice, very, very nice gesture. But no, I might have to defer to you on this game if you saw any of it. From what I saw, Darcy Kemper looked all right, but day drinking takes its toll, so I missed the last 2 periods of the hockey game.
Understandable. So. I was busy arguing with your roommate on Twitter about the name of our website, so
who was also taking into some day drinking.
So anyway, it looked like, quite frankly, in the second period, it was rather boring and uneventful. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That was a rough period to get through, and I completely understand somebody falling asleep. But it was kind of a complete game by the Wild. They really dominated the pace of play. They got 44 shots, something like that on Mike Smith. Mike Smith played well. I mean, he had he stone cold robbed, who was it? I believe it was Nino?
It might have been.
He absolutely flat out robbed someone. And he played pretty well and still let up 3 goals. So, and as far as Kemper goes, I think that was a good game out of him. The 1 goal he let up was just, an absolutely ginormous rebound that basically shot almost, it would have gone, out of the zone had the Coyote player not intercepted it and fired it past him. But outside of that, he didn't have to make a lot of saves. He only made, I believe it was around 20 shots on goal. But I think he looked pretty sharp. He looked pretty solid. It was something that you would really kind of hope to see out of Kemper for a long time. Granted, that's probably the last time you'll see him in the Wild goal. I think that's a probability, more than a possibility. But he looked good. He looked good enough to where if we do have to see him in the playoffs, that was something to build off of. Because obviously, if anybody needed a confidence builder, it was Darcy Kemper. And that game, I felt like, was a confidence builder for him. He made the saves he needed to make. The Wild still played a pretty good defensive game. He had to make some big stops, but the Wild played a good defensive game. And all around, I think it was a good game. I think it was a good effort, considering they sat a couple of guys. Granlund got the pine. Spurgeon is dealing with a lower body issue. Those are concerning going into the playoffs. But at least we were able to get those guys some rest. I feel like that's going to be important. So
I'll agree with your assessment since, like I said, I unfortunately missed the last two periods, and unfortunately at the end of the national championship game between Denver and Minnesota Duluth.
That was I watched most of that third period, and that was a tremendous hockey game. I mean, you feel for those Duluth kids because they give up the Hattie to the kid and then have to battle their way back, but after they scored, the last 5 minutes of that game were some just outstanding, exciting hockey. I mean, everything you would want out of a national championship game, and you feel for all the local kids playing for the Bulldogs, and obviously a lot of Wild fans that are Bulldog fans that are well documented on this podcast and Twitter. You feel for them because that's a tough way to lose a hockey game. But I saw a lot of classy tweets from a lot of Bulldog fans at the end of that game. Their kids played their heart out, and there's nothing really to hang your head about. I mean, you nearly lost to a very good team. So,
as we've talked about this before, how the NCAA tournament's just a big crapshoot. You only get one game, and if it was 5 or 7 game series, I'd still maybe take the Bulldogs. I really like how that team played and what I saw of them this year, and unfortunate that they didn't get the championship in the end, but as you said, it was a good game, was a good run, and tip your hat to them. They've certainly done more noteworthy things in the last 3 years than the particular team I choose to get behind. So, it's hard to make any jabs when that team has been. I don't know.
I think the program is in such a better place right now. That program is just. I think it's just the iron sharpens iron thing. The NCHC is just that good, and no surprise, the Golden Rodents here in the Twin Cities locally have moved to a conference that is not as strong in hockey as the NCHC, and therefore they've gotten a little soft, and so that's kind of what it is. I mean, you saw the Gophers in their heyday when they were in the WCHA. And now, the good teams in the WCHA migrated to the NCHC, and not shockingly, both of those teams from that conference are in the national championship game. So, I don't know. It just, it's an unfortunate turn of events for Gopher hockey fans, but at least the state of Minnesota still has had some representation in world-class hockey events.
All right. Anyway, back to the Wild here. As we can, we might get our favorite guest Nate Wells back on, and we can talk about college hockey a lot more. But so my big question out of the week that we just saw was how do we feel on Devin Dubnyk, because we talk about him in our playoff show that you'll hear Tuesday, later in the week, and how much goaltending is going to factor in. But how are we feeling on what we saw from him this last week and what we might see moving forward?
Well, like I said, I feel better about his game now, and we can talk even more about this because goaltending means so much in the playoffs. But I feel like he's tracking the puck better right now. I feel like he's playing with a little more confidence. The goals that he was allowing during the slump, there wasn't a whole lot of them where you were just like, oh my God, that was terrible. Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of those goals. There was a lot of goals where you were like, well, he should have had that, or maybe he could have had that. A lot of those goals. I mean, that was the vast majority of the goals scored during the slump was like, well, if he's playing better, he has that. There wasn't anything that was super soft. So I feel like he's on a better track to, that marginal difference where those goals where he should have had that or he could have had that. I feel like he's stopping those now, or the last 2 weeks or so. I mean, he, didn't look completely on the ball in Colorado, but I feel like other games, he's looked pretty good, and there's only so much you can do. I don't know, just feel like he's in a better place now, confidence-wise. I feel like he's a guy that is kind of up and down as it is. I cited this in my article about him 2 weeks ago. He's a roller coaster guy. I mean, the last 2 seasons, his month of March was absolutely ridiculous, like otherworldly numbers, and then he fell apart in April. Well, this year, he kind of fell apart in March. So you're really kind of hoping for that nice bounce back that you might get out of him in April for the playoffs. And that's kind of, what you really have to kind of rest your hat on is that he bounces back as he's been known to do. Just this time he bounces back from the regular season into the playoffs instead of vice versa.
When I mentioned it as we were kind of recapping the Hurricanes game, was that, I really did not like his first period. I thought he kind of looked like the Dubnyk of March, but then there just came a point somewhere in that intermission when he locked it down and he didn't allow a goal again. And, I wasn't down on him even though he gave up 3 goals against Colorado. I thought, it's hard to stop any of those shots, especially the Jost one where, he kind of came out to challenge it and Jost quickly put one over his shoulder. It's hard to beat good shots sometimes.
Yep.
And
Jost was all alone. So
yeah, and it was an improvement from what we saw in March, and you hope that given the rest and maybe a little bit of confidence from getting a couple wins here, he can do good things in the playoffs this week.
Yeah.
So it's a if, but you like what you saw this last week, and hopefully he can carry that on. He still hasn't had a shutout since December, I believe.
Yeah.
So hopefully that streak can come to an end sometime soon, and the team in front of him can play some defense.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen. Another thing during this slump in March, and not to put it on the team, because I think the team played okay as a whole in March. There were some nasty defensive breakdowns in March, and that's what led to a lot of the goals. Goals that maybe he should have had, and there were some goals where, quite frankly, he didn't have a chance on. So, we saw a really good defensive game out of them against the Sharks a few weeks ago. We saw a really good defensive game out of them against the Coyotes last night. So, if they can put together a game like that, like the goal that scored against Kemper last night, I don't think Dubnyk lets that goal up. He's just better at controlling rebounds. He just seems to play a little bit softer pads. He's better at directing rebounds than Kemper is. I think Dubnyk gets a shutout there. So I just think it revolves around, you can't put everything on the goaltender, and by the same token, you got to have some solid defense played by your skaters in order to get a shutout. That's just kind of how it works. It's really tough to get a shutout when you've got some of the nasty defensive breakdowns that we've seen, not naming names, Marco Scandella, but it's kind of tough to get shutouts when you've got those kind of plays that are allowed by your defense.
Yeah. And we'll kind of get into more of what we need to see out of this team in the playoffs in our special playoff show.
Woo!
When we'll have a special guest to help break down the Blues.
Yeah.
So be sure to look for that on Tuesday. But as for now, we're going to kind of continue to kind of wrap up the regular season here. Minnesota set as we heard in the intro, a franchise record in wins and points in the season. They had 49 wins and record 49, 25, and 8, 106 points. Second best in the Western Conference, 3 behind the Blackhawks.
Yep.
So think about that. They went through all that in March, and they still only finished 3 points behind the Chicago Blackhawks for best record in the Western Conference.
I mean, you're talking a bounce here, a bounce there, and they're the division champion. It's really that small of a margin.
I guess overall on the season, what are your thoughts as you kind of can reflect on it now? I mean, you kind of think back to our season preview show, and one of us was a little more optimistic than the other. But I mean, despite the March, swoon almost, you still got to be pleasantly pleased with what this team did. Almost 50 wins. They're going to have, at least a Vezina Trophy candidate, and they have home ice in the first round of the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, if you had
the second time in team history.
I mean, if you'd have told me at the beginning of the year they're going to win 49 games, they're going to have home ice in round 1 of the playoffs, and you hadn't mentioned a March slump, I would have taken that in a heartbeat.
Right.
So I guess what do you feel on this?
I think that the March slump is really going to skew a lot of things for this team. And maybe not now, or maybe now more so than later. Maybe once summer rolls around after the playoffs, depending on how the playoffs go. Because if they're one and done in the playoffs, then that March slump is all anyone's going to talk about. Oh, they were terrible after March and they never recovered. But if this team wins a playoff series or wins 2 playoff series or wins 3 playoff series or etc., nobody's going to talk about March. So I think by that standard, this season can really be nothing but kind of a success, is the best Wild team in history. Let's not forget that. Let's not act like that didn't happen just because they had a bad month of March. And by the way, in April, in 8 games, they got points in 7 of them. So, ended the game on a 4-game winning, or ended the season on a 4-game winning streak. So I don't think that we should skew our view of the entire season. I mean, look how much fun we had in December. Look how much fun it was following this team in January. This team was so good. So good. I mean, I don't think there's any Wild team that you can call dominant. And this team, through December and January into February, was dominant. I mean, there was really no other way to put it. They absolutely were dominant. Did they lose some games in there? Sure, of course. But you can't say that for any other Wild team. So, by that token, I mean, best record ever, most wins ever, second place in the division, behind, the tippy top of the NHL, basically, in the Blackhawks. I think you have to call this season a success. Is the first time Boudreau didn't win a division title in a full season. That's disappointing, sure, but 3 points behind the Blackhawks,
Maybe the difference is Boudreau wins all the division titles and then croaks in the playoffs. What if that's different this year?
Yeah, he doesn't have the burden of raising a division banner the next season to worry about.
Yeah.
We've already got enough meaningless banners.
I mean, that wouldn't be a terrible thing at the barren rafters of the XL Energy Center.
Hey, if they raise a Western Conference Champions banner or a Stanley Cup Champions banner, I don't think anybody's even going to remember the whole division thing.
I'm going to savor that.
Instead of Flyby Kiss.
Was that the kiss of death? Isn't that
that might have been. Oh my God, I didn't even think of that. He is the giggly godfather.
I was wondering why you were looking over my shoulder, and then I checked the reflection.
I was going to say something, and then he gave me the shush sign. So
he was
set you up.
Yeah. Anyway,
John Bonus, by the way, making a non-vocal appearance in the Giles and the Goalies podcast.
Yeah, that's rare. As I tweeted, we are in rarefied air here at Tin Whiskers as we share the pub with Gleeman and the Geek podcast today.
But they were smart. They put us on opposite sides of the bar because they didn't want a knife fight to break out.
Yeah.
Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face. Of course. And that's it. Now let's do this.
Those GATG podcasts, they're just bad blood.
Yeah. So much bad blood. Anyway. Just reflecting on the season again, it's hard to be disappointed in the whole grand scheme of things. Yes, they were bad in March, but we made it very well documented that goaltending was bad in March.
Yeah.
Which was why they kind of had a nosedive because their puck possession numbers were going up in March.
They were good.
They've been the best they've ever been. But if goaltending can turn around, this team can go, and that's what we saw, for most of the year. And obviously a big key in the offseason is finding a backup goalie that can get you a few more starts and spell your goaltender a little bit more rest. But
sure,
all in all, I think you got to be pleasantly appreciative of the season that they had because, it wasn't like they were ever teetering on missing the playoffs or just going into a full nosedive lottery pick like, the previous 3 Mike Yeo seasons. When they hit a slump, they had the swoon cushion.
Yeah.
That can be our thing this year, the swoon cushion. We kept saying, build it up.
And they did.
They did.
And it worked.
And it very much played into effect as, even St. Louis only got 7 points from catching them for second. So it wasn't that bad, and it was a good season, but, given how they've played, and their trade for Martin Hansel, signaling all in. We'll look back on this season, and it's going to be defined by what they're going to do in the playoffs.
Yep, absolutely.
We can sit here and say, "Oh, it's nice right now," but when the playoffs end, that's going to be the tell-all on this season.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and that was the reason for the Hansel trade, and that was the reason for burning a year on Eric's neck, because I think they realized now is the time, and you talked about this a long time ago, where the West isn't as good as it once was. I mean, you've got the Blackhawks above you, and that's it. The Wild are the second best team in the West. So if there's ever a time, where the Blackhawks aren't going to go away, let's just face it, they've got Kane and Taves wrapped up for the next century. If there's ever a time to push your chips in, it's when you're on par with the Blackhawks, head and shoulders above the rest of the crowd. And so the Hansel deal, albeit how expensive that was, and the Eriksson Ek, contract or year burning, I should say, it all was always was 100% geared towards the playoffs, and that's just the truth of it. There's no other reason why you make those moves besides the playoffs. They didn't acquire Martin Hansel to win the division. They didn't call up Eriksson Ek at the last second to try to make a last second run at the division. They don't care about that, nor should they. It's all about the playoffs, and it is about the Blackhawks, but it's about beating the Blackhawks in the playoffs, not in the regular season.
And having Eriksson Ek down the middle will greatly help in the playoffs, as we'll discuss on our playoff show. If you haven't gotten the gist, we have a playoff show on Tuesday. So just so you know.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Brandon Warren telling you to listen to Midwest Swing, part of the Cold Omaha Podcast Network. Midwest Swing covers the Minnesota Twins and all baseball and is available on coldomaha.com, Libsyn, Stitcher, Google Play, and of course on iTunes. That's Midwest Swing, part of the Cold Omaha Podcast Network.
All right, we're back. Had to get another beer.
Beer break.
Yeah. Speaking of, we, as I said, beginning of the show, we're at Tin Whiskers here in St. Paul. Again, corner of 9th and Robert. Stop on in before Wild home games, and if you show your Wild ticket or you're wearing Wild apparel, you get $1 off any beer. I just had the double IPA, which was very, very delightful.
Yeah.
I don't often really go for IPAs, but that was a very, very good double IPA. And now I'm working on the Shortbridge Stout, which is just a couple sips in, but also very delightful. I feel like I could say delightful just about anything they have. So that's why you should come down and try the beer, because it is pretty good. I'd say it's a good, probably a 15-minute walk from the arena, but come on in before a game, get your $1 off the beer, have some good beer before you walk back over to the game. Maybe walk off that buzz if you have something with a little bit higher ABV. But it's not a bad spot, especially on a day like today when the sun is trying to come out. It's nice sitting here. Yeah.
I feel like downtown St. Paul is underrated in that aspect, where it's just kind of nice to hang around sometimes.
It is.
It's a lot more chill. It's not as pretentious as Minneapolis.
I'm a St. Paul guy at heart, so naturally I'm going to throw my support for just about anything in St. Paul.
So am I. So I'm going to throw all the shade I possibly can at the other side of the river.
Yeah,
I had the Shortbridge, which is the combination of the beer you're drinking now, the stout, and the Wheatstone Lager, which is that was delightful. And now I have moved on to the Lumen Lager, and that is a red lager, which is fantastic as well. So, there's a lot of craft beer going around these days, and I'm not going to say any of them are doing a bad job, but I feel like this place does a really good job.
Yeah.
So definitely hit them up if you find them in stores. Obviously, that works just as well too. Yeah. But this tap room is a really cool place and a pretty nice location. Yeah.
So, come on down. Tell them you heard about them from the podcast. That would do us a solid. But do them a solid. Just come on down before a game. Hopefully, there'll be quite a few home games this spring where you can make the lovely trek over to the X from here.
Yeah,
but. They also have some pretty cool-looking merchandise. I tweeted out a picture of the hoodie they had from our podcast account last week, which I'm really big on. We were looking at that, and then you so aptly pointed out their scarf for the soccer aficionados out there like myself, which actually is a pretty good looking scarf. So maybe have to check to see if the old roommate.
Does he have a birthday coming up?
No, not till November. But
wedding present? I'm just joking. Who would marry Dan?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm laughing because Dan and wedding not going into a sentence. Oh my God, he's gonna just set fire to my room.
I'm so glad I don't live there. Oh, it's gonna be terrible. Anyway, much thanks to Tin Whiskers.
Yeah,
much thanks.
Check out Tin Whiskers. Again, they're at the corner of 9th and Robert Street in St. Paul, right around the corner from Keys Cafe.
Yep.
You can find them on Twitter at Tin Whiskers Brew. We keep tweeting out their handle. You can also find them online at twbrewing.com.
Yes.
But give them a look. Come on down. Tell them you heard about them from the show. And I think we have one more show next week.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where it goes. But should be fun. Again, good beer. So
always good.
Yeah. And I needed to get another beer anyway because I need it for this next segment.
Meanwhile, I have a beer for celebratory purposes.
Yeah. Actually, I'm surprised you're going for a second. I think it was the first time I've seen you go for two.
More than one beer? Well, that's because I'm not paying for it, so that's a big reason.
Yeah. I was at the old establishment that we used to go to, and I tossed some shade. So.
Yeah.
But it's all in good fun. So
sure.
But there's
a
little bit of shade tossing.
Right. We are open for. I mean, we're not going to go to a bar. We're not going to promote like a Wisconsin bar or something. But if there's a product we can get behind, we'll get behind it.
Yeah.
Phrasing.
Unless I was going to say unless it's like Wisconsin related or something out of North Dakota.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know about that, but anyway. So it is the end of the season. So we're gonna take a look back to our beginning of the season show where we did some preseason over-unders for what we were going to see from the regular season. And because Ben is laughing so heartily, that's because he took me to task in this. Well, and to my defense, I was very pessimistic. Obviously I was very high on Bruce Boudreau coming into the year, but I really didn't think he could do these kind of wonders with this team. So.
And I'm not even going to... I think at the time, and you can go back and listen to the Season of Slaw episode where all these predictions were made.
Which, again, we never really made Slaw the war cry.
Not really. It's still soup.
People still add us about soup.
It's not bad having a consistent bit, though.
Yeah.
But, I think even at the time, I think the over-unders you set, and I think I said this about virtually all of them, were really good. I felt like you were kind of on the mark. I really kind of beat you up about Koivu, but I think that was the only one where I was like, this over-under is terrible.
That was the only one where you were literally, are you nuts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I called you Team Swamp Town, which isn't even an insult, it's just kind of a manner of thinking. But I think they were all pretty good, so the ones that you were on the wrong side of, I totally understand where you're at, because... You're not hedging your bets, but you're not. You weren't counting on Bruce Boudreau being the magic bullet to turn this team around. And did we see that up until about March? Yeah, that's exactly how it went. But March kind of reminded us that this is still, a somewhat flawed team sometimes. So I don't doubt you in the least for being a little bit negative. And I think if you were to put exact numbers on your predictions, you probably would have came out looking a little bit better than simply picking over-unders. So
I think I was a little sour from how last season went down.
Oh, I don't blame you. I would be too.
But anyway, all right. So, yeah, if you want to check that out for what we actually had to say and all of it, go back and listen, and then please feel free to @ me, because nobody ever gives me crap about anything on Twitter.
Actually, only one guy does. Well, two.
Yeah.
Me and your roommate. So that's about it.
You can say his name. I've already said it a few times. But it's been a few shows, so... Anyway, So the first one we had was Wild Winds, which I set the over-under at 46.5, which, factoring in the Eric Stahl edition and Bruce Boudreau, that was a fair thing to say. So set at 46.5. You took the over. I took the under. And ladies and gentlemen, your Minnesota Wild finished with 49 wins.
Yeah, and so, but to your point, the last 4 games, the Cupcake schedule, 4 wins.
That put them
over the top. So
I needed them to lose.
So, and if they had lost any of those games, it wouldn't have mattered in the least. And I don't think they would have even cared. So, like I said, yeah, you lost that particular battle, but I don't feel like you were that far off.
No, not far off, and I needed that Cupcake schedule, as you said, to kind of hit the over. And then the byproduct to that was Wild Points, which was set at 94.5. They finished with 106, and you took the over on 94.5, and I took the under. All right, this just gets worse.
It's not going to get better, Giles. It's not going to get better.
Oh, man.
And it was weird for me because I felt like a complete homer. I was very optimistic about this team because I really like Bruce Boudreau. I absolutely loved the Eric Stahl signing. And I was on those nuts from day one. But it's still at the time, given how last season ended, I still felt like a mega homer saying, yeah, I think they're going to have more than 95 points. You know what I mean? So looking back now, we look kind of silly doubting them that much. But at the time, yeah, it felt like that was the number. That was a good number. And I think that's exactly what I said when that's what you set the over-under at.
So we have Devin Dubnyk starts. Oh. Hey, we're not in the bar anymore. If you're wondering why we had a quick sudden change of venue, in classic Giles and the Goalies fashion, we lost some of our audio at the end of the show, which is not great, but we're gonna pile on here and try and reenact the last 20 minutes. Fortunately, we didn't lose anything, overly bad. We didn't lose the Flyby Kiss. We can't recreate that, so that's still there.
I don't know if we caught the hug, though. I think the hug was later.
Ben, I would tell you, that was not a hug.
No,
by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot happening there that I'm not going to share, but...
Sure.
So we were middle of the discussion on our over-unders. You were busy celebrating your victorious achievements in this discussion with a cold beer, which you no doubt finished long ago. How was that beer?
That one was pretty good. I think I liked the Shortbridge better, but the Lumen Lager that I had second was pretty good. Did we cover that in the part that we lost, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got the beer. I just wanted to know if the last beer was good.
Gotcha. Yes, it was.
Anyway, our over-unders. So we had Devin Dubnyk starts, which we set at 65.5.
Yes.
You took the under, I took the over. And Dubnyk finished the year with 63 starts. So once again, you are the winner. That's a recurring theme here.
Sure.
Despite Stalock and Kemper getting some starts here in the last few weeks, Dubnyk almost hit that over for me, which would have made me so happy.
Right.
Except not really. Moving on, the other one was Ryan Suter minutes. We had him at 27-15 was the over-under we set, which you look back at Bruce Boudreau's previous teams, Anaheim, Washington, he never really had anyone play over 25 minutes, and
right.
So we kind of figured Suter would get a bump down in ice time from the 29.5 minutes he was playing under the previous coaching regime, and And he did this year. He went down to 26.55 was his time on ice, and we both hit the under on that.
Sure.
So
yeah, that's a good thing because I don't know that Boudreau ever had a defenseman like that before. I don't think Mike Green was logging 29 minutes a night, or I don't know if he's capable of that. But yeah, certainly.
If you're logging Mike Green for 29 minutes a night, you got problems.
Well, Boudreau had defensive problems in Washington, but no, yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think we're both on that because we that was something Boudreau said almost immediately, was that he likes to spread around the ice time for defensemen, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and Jared Spurgeon, Bruce Boudreau became very fond of him, so he really got a sharp boost in minutes this year. And
right.
Considering the defensive struggles of Scandella and Dumba, it's kind of surprising that Suter nearly logged almost 2 minutes less per night this year than he did last year. But hey, good on Boudreau for hopefully keeping something left in the tank for Suter, who usually kind of flames out this time of year.
True.
So, kind of be interesting to see what he can bring in the postseason.
Yeah, I think it was last season, I want to say. Everyone swore to God up and down that Suter was hurt at the end of the year. And then obviously it turned out that he wasn't hurt. So it's entirely possible that was just a use thing because obviously under Mike Yeo, he was rode hard and put away wet. So
The next one we had was Zach Parise goals, which we set at 26.5. You took the under. I took the over. I was sipping on some weird Kool-Aid at that time during the podcast, apparently. I went all in. I pushed all my chips in on that.
I like how the one thing that you clung to for positivity burned you.
Yeah, this is why I'm not positive. It burns me.
You were positive about literally one thing, and it came back and, arguably one thing, and it came back and bit you. That's just
wait till I'm 70 years old when I'm just an absolute bitter old man who finds no joy in nothing.
Well, are we going to notice the difference?
Well played. We set the over-under at 26.5. And the actual goal total in 69 games was 19 goals for Mr. Parise, and it seems like 5 of them came here in the last couple weeks. So he was nowhere close.
Yeah, and I said this even when I took the under. I'm not a Parise hater. The contract is what it is, and I think we'll regret it sooner rather than later. But at the same time, I'm not a Parise hater, and the only reason I've never doubted his skill, his work ethic, et cetera, et cetera. It was the health, that's exactly what I cited when I said I'm taking the under. I'm taking the under because I wasn't convinced he would play 80 games, and by Jove, I was correct on that. So, had he played 80 games, maybe he's a lot closer to that number, you think. If you extrapolate it, he's still not quite there yet, but he was also playing hurt, a lot of people felt like, for a while there. So, the guy's health is really the only thing holding him back, which is yet another reason why that contract is probably going to come back and bite this team.
Yeah, so hopefully they win now.
No kidding.
Next one we had, which was the most controversial one, or at least the one you kind of got on me the most about out of any of these for the over-unders, was Koivu points, which I was a little down on him last year, and with the addition of Eric Stahl, who we're going to get to in a minute, I figured Koivu would have another kind of a dip in points, and so I set the over-under for him at 42.5. And I don't exactly remember my logic, but I think I said something along the lines of he's just barely going to hit the over here.
Yeah.
Because we both did take the over.
Yeah.
You just flat smashed the over. And Koivu did. He hit the over. He had 58 points this year. So it proved me wrong, even though Eric Stahl was and then the number one center, if you will.
Yeah.
It's hard to differentiate, as we pointed out their ice time was only 30 seconds apart.
Right.
So there was no definitive number one guy. But
right. Yeah, and I think your over was light, but at the same time, there were some people when we posted this on Wild Extra that were like, "Oh, I can totally see that happening," because I think he had 56 points last year, and some people predicted a pretty precipitous drop for him, not being the number one center anymore. We didn't quite see him having a dominating line with Granlund and Zucker coming. I don't think anybody saw that. But that was obviously a huge reason why he racked up so many points. I mean, if he would have bounced around with a bunch of different line mates with varying success like he has done in previous years, then yeah, there probably would have been a drop-off from him getting, being a little bit less of getting the top talent next to him like he had been. But yeah, I'll take the W there, and you should too.
Yeah. My wins in this are rare, so I'll take what I can get.
Right.
So, and then as I alluded to, we did set an over/under for Eric Stahl, as he was the team's big addition this year.
Mm-hmm.
We set his over/under at 47.5 points because he was coming off a 38-point year between Carolina and New York, and he was just not good at all. And there was, ponderings that, maybe he was just never going to be able to rebound, and, that is clearly not the case.
Right. Yeah, and as I mentioned when we actually recorded this, on the Hockey Wilderness podcast in the preseason, I made a bold prediction, and first I said it's a bold prediction that he's going to get 50 points. And then I was like, wow, that's not really all that bold, I guess, because he's done that before, and not that long ago. His 39 points last year, I think, were just kind of a really, really weird, kind of gross aberration, and largely fed by how bad he was in New York. I mean, he really didn't get anything together in New York. So I bumped up my bold prediction all the way to 60 points. And then he turns out he scores 65. So even my boldest prediction, even everyone's wildest dreams on Eric Stahl, I think were exceeded this year, and that just... I think a vast majority of us really loved that contract signing, but nobody in their right mind imagined this kind of season out of him, coming off the season that he came off of.
I feel like we're doing a really good job of repeating the exact same thing we said earlier.
Yeah, I think it's not bad, without being too stale maybe, if somebody was... I'm not hitting it verbatim, but I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. I guess that's what happens when you only have so much beer. You're able to remember a little bit more.
Those were some relatively strong beers too.
Yeah, that's why I limited it to just the two.
Sure.
Oh. So then just two more here. One of which is Jason Zucker goals, which we set at 21.5, which was a pretty lofty setting compared to what he did last year. Not good by any means, and the fact that he was gonna start the year a little down the depth chart because you didn't really know what you were gonna get out of him under Boudreau, and
right.
He kind of found a great line in late November with Koivu and Granlund, and he coasted to the over. I mean, he just barely hit the over. Injury didn't really help him there, but he did hit the over on this. He had 22 goals, and we both hit the over on this.
Nice.
So another double victory here.
Yeah, so I think who would have seen it coming that Jason Zucker would be an honorary Finn,
Nobody.
He's one of them, one of us, one of those.
His 22 goals were... I'm trying to get this to filter on my computer, but my computer's crap. So it looks like fourth best on the team, which isn't too bad considering the kind of high scoring this team had this year.
Right.
So good for him. Mm-hmm. You can find a hot prediction on him in the next podcast.
The magic of recording.
The last one, at least the last, real official one we had was Niederreiter goals, which I set at 27.5.
Yeah.
Which was, again, a little bit out there, but, not too terribly out there. And you took the over, and I took the under.
Yeah.
And he just came in at 25, just short of that, 27.5. So there's the lone victory for me. So,
the lone blemish on my record. I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight.
I think you'll do just fine.
I'll be okay. Maybe.
Don't strain yourself, patting yourself on the shoulder too hard.
It's not, like I said, I don't know exactly what was lost and what wasn't, but, I think the over-unders that you set weren't too bad. They were pretty good, and, coming off the season they came off of last year, it's kind of hard to imagine Bruce Boudreau completely fixing this team, and, kind of what we saw in March was evidence that he didn't completely fix this team, but, so I don't think you were that pessimistic, you know what I mean? Like, these over-unders were set at such good intervals that, you saw some players just barely missed it and some players just barely made it, by 1 or 2 in each stat. So, yeah, I wouldn't hang your head too hard on this, Giles. You did okay. At least you said good over-unders. Look on the bright side.
Yeah, I'm good at setting over-unders, so maybe a career in Vegas is
there you go. See? Positivity.
See, we finally found my calling 98 shows into this podcast.
Well, that amongst other things, but I don't think you're getting any professional beer drinking jobs anytime soon.
Yeah, we all got to shoot for something.
Right. Alrighty, so that's what we got for over-unders. Should we just go straight to jerseys?
Yeah, might as well.
Sure.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Oh, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
So, jersey segment for those new listeners is, or this year we are taking a team every week and we are imagining what they're going to look like in the Adidas rebrand in late June. And this week it is a team that was formerly near and dear to my heart, but they abandoned just about everything in their history except one player. So my allegiance to them is quite gone. And that is the Anaheim Ducks.
Yes. You know what, I didn't realize that we've been doing this jersey segment all season, and now we get to the Ducks, and I didn't even think about the whole tie-in to the actual jersey drop we use every week, and that it was about the Ducks. I didn't realize that even on the show previous. So.
Oh well.
Not
we'll
bad.
Realize things one day.
I wouldn't count on it.
At least it's voiced over by Bob Miller.
Right.
It's always a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
I love that drop. But anyway, we, even when we recorded this the first time, we really didn't have a lot of nice things to say here because the Ducks jerseys are just
awful.
Very not good. The webbed foot crest is just bad, and I kind of made the argument that it's maybe better as a shoulder patch, which you kind of shot me a weird look for.
I just, maybe, but I'm not even really fond of it for that.
Maybe it's not. What's next after alternate logo? Is it like a third logo?
A never used logo?
Yeah, there you go.
That's where it belongs. Yeah.
Put it behind the Wild Wing in the Jersey lore.
Yeah.
But, they're the orange and gold and black trim going down the sides of these jerseys are just, it's not good, and I'm just gonna assume that this is all just gonna translate into orange, gold, white, stripes down the side next season.
They're going to do 3 different color, 3 stripes.
I can't.
Gross.
I can't imagine they're going to. Maybe they will go in a different direction with their uniforms. Which, hey, great. But do I think they're going to continue on with the alternate Mighty Duck looking jersey? No.
Yeah.
Because why would they want to remember the Mighty Ducks?
Yeah, and we talked about this at the bar too. I said what were the odds that they went to something featuring that crest? 5%, and I think that might be generous. Just the odds that they actually, switch back, I should say, to the Mighty Ducks, the famous masked duck crest is so slim, which is unfortunate because I think you and I have a hard time being objective about it, but I even think objectively it's a good logo.
I'm objective when it comes to the Ducks.
I don't think either one of us is objective when it comes to the Ducks and or the Duck Wads. So, because there's clearly 2 different entities there. There's the Disney-owned Ducks, which we grew up loving, and then there is the Orange County Ducks, which is terrible.
Duck Wads.
Yeah, Duck Wads.
I don't know what to expect from the Ducks. And like I said, wouldn't surprise me if they just go with something really similar to what they do now. Obviously, the orange shoulder pipe on the home jersey will be a thing of the past.
Yeah,
but
maybe
otherwise, we gotta hope for some nice things out of it. Just have a nice hope.
I really, my hopes for Adidas, I don't know. They wane. They kind of ride a roller coaster a little bit. Some days I'm like, hey, maybe it won't be so bad. And then other days I'm like, God, this is going to be terrible.
So, that's all I got. Go back to the Mighty Ducks. Get the purple and teal going. Let's just throw it back.
Let's just go there.
But no, they won't do that.
Nope.
Don't expect it.
Nope.
All right. I think that'll do it for jerseys, unless we really want to sit here and gripe about how terrible the Ducks are at ignoring their past.
Well, I mean, I know you had some beefs when you had a beer in hand about Paul Correa, but I don't know. I don't think I want to get you down that road again, do I?
No, we can save that for a summer show.
We have a lot of material for summer shows at this point.
That could be a July show. Just get Giles liquored up and just say, Paul Correa, go.
It'd be like episode 120, Giles rants about Paul Correa.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so yeah, that's about it.
I forgot about it earlier, but I can give you a kind of a mulligan on your final thought, and we can quickly, vent about the Olympics and the lack of NHL participation upcoming in South Korea, because why would the NHL make a smart decision? But
yeah,
for those who haven't heard, and I don't know why you haven't heard, but on Monday, the NHL announced that they're not going to send players to the Olympics next season, just for a massive amount of reasons. And you kind of went on about who maybe is to blame here. So I'll kind of let you have at it again.
Yeah, I feel like I had a pretty good rant going. I hope I can somewhat replicate that.
Yeah, that was the casualty of this.
It really was. So yeah, I mean, Joe Booley from Hockey Wilderness wrote a great article on Monday about how the NHL is really, 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 really stupid for not going to the Olympics, and I agree with it. 98+%. There's some people that make arguments that it's not really a great thing for the NHL as much as it seems, but I got to think in Europe it means more than it does in North America, maybe because the lack of exposure that the NHL has over there. Those people really love hockey. But anyway, the NHL is absolutely idiotic for not doing this, and the way that the situation was handled by the NHL was just, as usual, pretty awful. And they're pretty stupid when it comes to promoting their product. So I have 110%, hatred towards the NHL for this, but another angle that I don't think anybody has brought up, for various political reasons, I'm sure, is that the NHLPA really kind of dropped the ball on this too. And the NHLPA basically, I guess how it went down was the NHL said, to the NHLPA, your players want to go to Korea. We'll let them go to Korea if you agree to a 2-year extension on the CBA. Which is kind of an understanding give and take deal. It was dumb they didn't resolve this Olympic thing during the CBA negotiations because, why would you want to do that? And the NHLPA said, well, we're not looking to make any concessions for our players, in order to do this, which I understand from a negotiating standpoint, which, I don't know, it's also kind of dumb because the NHL just gave you leverage saying, hey, we want more of this current CBA, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it because I don't think the NHL has ever said that to the NHLPA where, hey, we like where the CBA is, let's do more of it. And that's where I think the NHLPA failed, was that they were given an opportunity to extend the current CBA, and they balked at it just because they didn't want to play ball with the NHL. And that just kind of speaks to how toxic and caustic the relationship is between those two parties. But my thing is every time there's been a work stoppage in the NHL, it's been a lockout. It's been the NHL owners saying, hey, we're not making enough money. We need a new CBA because we're losing money here. So locking the players out, not letting them play. At no point has it been the players upset with their shake in the deal. I mean, they're getting paid pretty well for a sport that doesn't have nearly the coverage and exposure and money that the other major sports in North America have. So it just really seems bizarre to me that the NHLPA will be like, 2 more years of playing hockey and labor peace? No, we don't want that. We don't want to give you what you want. We just want to get what we want without, giving anything in return. So, I mean, I could be approaching this wrong, and I'm not exactly 100% sure how the negotiations went, but it just seems really dumb to me that the NHLPA is basically saying, like, yeah, no, there's going to be a lockout, earlier, 2 years earlier than there should be now, because damn well the owners are going to lock out the players as soon as the CBA expires, and they could have had 2 extra years of labor peace and maybe, God forbid, some time to work on that ahead of time. And so, and again, I don't want to say that the NHL isn't to blame here. They are absolutely to blame here. They are absolutely the bad guy in the situation because they're just looking to protect their investment more so than they're looking to grow their product. And I think they're, at fault here. Not 100% though. I think that the NHL had a chance, the NHLPA, the NHL Players Union had a chance to save the NHL from themselves, and they instantly declined because that's just where that relationship is. You've got two parties that are very, very bullheaded and quite frankly don't have the wants and needs of the fans in mind. And that's what happens. I mean, that's how we end up with labor stoppages every freaking time. Because these two parties just can't possibly see eye to eye on anything. And even in this situation where there's something that benefits the NHLPA, they still wouldn't do it because that relationship is so sour. And because they're just more worried about not taking a weaker stance on things. I don't even know. But it's really unfortunate. And obviously nobody loses here more than the fans. So that's just that was my rant on the Olympics and anything that the NHL does kind of sends me or you into a rant, so I guess we shouldn't really be surprised.
Yeah, and like the original recording, I will just end it there because that's a hard rant to follow.
Right.
Do you have a final thought now that I kind of did a little switcheroo on that?
That was my final thought on the original. I haven't thought of anything new. I liked your final thought, so we can just finish with that.
Yes. My final thought is tonight is Bob Miller's final game behind the mic for the LA Kings after 44 years. And an absolute gem. There are certain announcers I look forward to every year when I renew my NHL TV subscription, just because that gives me the chance to listen to some of these announcers, and Bob Miller has been one of them. And being out in LA at 7:30 starts, or 9:30 starts, 7:30 starts in LA. You know, that kind of kills a lot of my chance to view these games because I'm not staying up till midnight. But, you know, any chance I got, you know, I would get to watch because Bob Miller is just so good and one of the best to ever call a hockey game. So that's kind of where I'll leave that. So just kind of a day of goodbyes in the NHL as I tweeted and was put on the Kings telecast. So sick brag, I know.
Beat me to it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my final thought. So good luck to whoever has to fill Bob's shoes next year, because good lord.
Oh, I know. It's like filling Vin Scully's shoes, you know. It's like, oof.
I don't even know who's filling Vin Scully's shoes.
Nobody does. That's the problem.
Well, I think most people stopped caring about the Dodgers after Vin Scully left. So.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it. It's getting late, and I still got to edit this half hour we just put in still. Yeah, you can catch us on Twitter at Giles Farrell, at Ben Remington. Find the podcast on Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. Big thank you to Andy at Tin Whiskers for putting up with us today. Fortunately, we lost the last little bit of the podcast, but hopefully when we're back next week, we can get it all in without interruption like this. You can find Tin Whiskers on Twitter at Tin Whiskers Brew, or you can find them twbrewing.com. Again, check them out if you ever go visit them. Tell them you heard about them from us. That would be great. And, again, grab a beer before any Wild game here in the spring. So that'll do it for us. You can find us on Libsyn. Give us an iTunes rating, Stitcher, and then again we will be back Tuesday with a special playoff preview podcast. It should be a good time. So that'll wrap it up for us, and we will see you soon.
Later.
St. Paul, Minnesota. Minneapolis, Minnesota.
We are ducks, and ducks fly together.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.